just start there.
Intro and Todd, where is the best place for them to stand? Front, up in front? Okay.
Walk off the red.
Here. We'll give this a couple minutes. What? Oh, I've got this one, so. John, are you hearing this one? Apparently it works. Welcome to everyone. On behalf of St. Timothy's New Episcopal Women's Group, as we gather today, both in person and via live stream, we'd like to thank Catherine Wilder and Sue Brady from the League of Women Voters for coming to share nonpartisan information on ballot measures which we are privileged to have the right to vote on November 5th. I'd like to remind everyone that the deadline for registering to vote is October 21st. If you wish to vote early, you'll need to register early. The Secretary of State's website, soscal.gov, will get you that information. The League of Women Voters is lwvc.org. I have a handout which will be available at the end or online with information on vetted sources for gathering more information. I'd also like to let you know that St. Clair's in Pleasanton and Genesis are going to be hosting a Zoom ballot party meeting on October 17th at 7:30. You will need to pre-register for that. They'll have a number of presenters from St. Mary's College and also Las Positas, as well as several local congregations. So that will be a really interesting program. You can get more information on that by going to St. Clair's website. And on November 3rd, we'll be hosting a HICAP live stream meeting here at St. Timothy's regarding health insurance advocacy from the Health Insurance Advocacy Counseling program, HICAP, which gives you in-depth information on non-sponsored information regarding Medicare policies. I'd like to open us with a prayer. As we gather today, we give thanks for all who have sacrificed for our right to vote. We remember that what they have done has made this a sacred act. May we honor their sacrifice by being well informed. May we always remember our call as Christians to be guided by Jesus' message of love. Amen. Catherine and Sue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sue. This is Catherine. And we are from the League of Women Voters. And now I've got a lot of things in my hand. Okay, and we're going to be presenting the pros and cons today. The League of Women Voters of the United States is 100 years old. We have been doing nonpartisan organizing for 100 years, trying to inform the community and participate actively in government. the league never endorses a candidate or a party. We are nonpartisan, no candidates, no parties. On the other hand, we do try to influence public policy decisions through the work we do on a daily basis, but also through education and advocacy within the community. So the league will take positions on things, but those are based on the education and information that they have acquired to create positions. So they have a position on education. They have a position on juvenile justice. And they will never make a recommendation unless their position somehow supports or opposes a initiative. Today, we will only be giving you the education piece. We are not here with our advocacy hats on. We're going to tell you about the pros and cons, and it'll be up to you to make your decision and to take any further research in order to do that. Okay.
Good morning. Oh, yeah, it is a lot to maybe, would you? Thank you. All right. Glad to be here. Thank you for cutting short, perhaps, your coffee time to connect with one another, to review these ballot measures with us. We are going to take, probably it'll be about 40 minutes to walk through, 45 minutes to review with you, and then you might have already said this, but we'll ask you to please hold questions until we've gone through everything, just so we don't get stuck on one, because there's some interesting stuff, and then we don't get through them all. Can everyone online, are we good in terms of volume and that sort of thing? Great. So there are 10 ballot initiatives that we are going to go through, and 5 of them are from the legislature. That's Propositions 2 through 6. 5 of them are from citizens' initiatives, Propositions 32 through 36. And the California Constitution requires that bond issues and constitutional amendments be approved by voters once they're passed in the legislature. That's why we're seeing them here, because they have been approved, but now we all have a say. And then the citizens' initiatives require petitions with an extraordinary amount of signatures based on a percentage, depending on what they are, based on a percentage of those who voted in the last election for governor. And so it's something like over 874,000 signatures required for constitutional amendments, for example. So the core of the slide deck, as we walk through each proposition pretty systematically, it's from our League of Women Voters of California, it's from the state, but also these other sources are informing as well. And they are Ballotpedia, Cal Matters, and the Legislative Analyst's Office. Did I miss anything? Oh, it is moving. Oh, okay, it's moving on its own. Well, so far we're good. Oh. Thank you. All right. Well, we'll see how it goes. Are you ready? Should we start with Proposition 2? All right. So Proposition 2 is about bonds for public schools and community college facilities. And the situation is it's related to repair, renovation, as well as new construction for classrooms. The state government raises money to help build and repair by selling bonds, which are then repaid over time. And so this repair, renovation, construction has to do with things like HVAC, air conditioning, plumbing, broadband access, as well as structural improvements. And the fiscal effects are the state will spend $500 million a year for the next 35 years to repay the bonds if the proposal passes. And the proposal is to allow the state to sell $10 billion in bonds to help build and repair. And the way that those funds would be allocated, it would be $8.5 billion for K through 12 facilities and $1.5 billion for community colleges. And supporters say that bonds will help pay for badly needed repairs and security improvements, thereby making schools and community colleges safer. Opponents say that makes taxpayers pay bond interest over many years, and the money goes to wasteful construction projects instead of classroom instruction. Some additional information to share. There is some opposition. Rather than it being based on just the pure costs, it's based on an inequity of the system, that school districts pay 40 to 50% of the cost through local bonds, which puts poor districts at a disadvantage because they're not able to raise the funds. And Prop 2 does slightly lower the contribution required from poor school districts, but that impact is pretty minimal. Supporters add that improved schools equal better test scores, improved attendance, fewer suspensions, et cetera. And one piece of additional information, I don't think it's on the slides. In January of 2022, the state auditor reported, the state auditor office reported that there are $7.4 billion already in requests for state funding over the next 5 years to meet current and anticipated modernizations. So a good chunk of that is already accounted for in a way, or identified as needed. So who are the supporters? And the supporters, and in terms of funding, it totals $2.42 million of support from the California Building Industry Association Issues Committee, the Yes on Prop 2 Coalition for Adequate School Housing Issues Committee, both at $1 million, and then two more at $100,000, the Association of California School Administrators Issues PAC, and the California Alliance for Jobs Rebuild California Committee. And then there were other miscellaneous smaller donors that make up the balance. And then only one opposing with no funding, and that's the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. So that is Prop 2. I don't know if there's anything you would add, or?
Excellent, no problem. I had a little bit of a lecture from my husband. He was a community college finance guy for many years, but you've covered pretty much everything here. All right. Proposition 3. Proposition 3 is a constitutional amendment. It is asking the question that should the California Constitution be amended to define marriage as a fundamental right for all, regardless of race, sex, and remove any language that states that marriage is only between a man and a woman. So the situation right now is that in our Constitution, it says that marriage is only between a man and a woman. That happened in Proposition 8 back in, it doesn't say, a while ago, 2008. And then shortly thereafter, the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. So we no longer have that law in our action. However, it is still in our Constitution. So this proposition would change the Constitution so that it says essentially that it would enshrine marriage as available to anybody of any gender, sexual orientation, or race. So it is a broad statement. There's no physical impact of this to the state. The supporters of this say that the California Constitution should affirm marriage equality, which is the law of the U.S., and our Constitution is not meeting that need. Prop 3 protects the fundamental right to marry regardless of gender or race. Opponents say that same-sex marriage is already legal, so there's no need to change the Constitution. And they say that Prop 3 removes all rules for marriage, opening the door to child marriages, incest, and polygamy. A little bit of information. Prop 8 amended the state constitution to state that marriage is only between a man and woman, violates the U.S. Constitution. Additionally, incest and polygamy are still illegal in our Constitution. They are a separate law. Additionally, anybody under the age of 18 who wants to marry must have both their parents' permission and the court's permission. So these do not change with the constitutional amendment that we're asking. There is some concern by supporters of Prop 3 that without a constitutional amendment, if the Supreme Court were to reverse position on the freedom to marry, as they did with Roe v. Wade, that returning control to the state would then reenact the law that says marriage is only between a man and a woman. So that was another motivation for moving that out of our Constitution. Support, as you can see, comes from a number of different places. From Kevin De Leon has a couple of PACs which he is supporting several of these propositions. Yes on Prop 3, Equality of California, Federated Indians of Grafton Rancheria, California Federation of Teachers, ACLU, California Works, and Planned Parenthood. The opposition is the California Family Council and the American Council of Evangelicals, and there is no funding on that side. Okay.
Proposition 4. This authorizes bonds for safe drinking water, wildfire prevention, and protecting communities and natural lands from climate risk. The question, should voters let the state sell $10 billion in bonds for various projects to reduce climate risks and impacts? The situation, climate change, is negatively impacting all of us, but especially those with low incomes. I mean, just look at what happened too with Hurricane Helene in the past week, you know, and I think this summer was the hottest in California record. And so the proposal is to allow the state to sell $10 billion in bonds for projects related to water, wildfire, coastal resilience, fish, wildlife, clean air, and to mitigate extreme heat. The fiscal effects: the state would pay $400 million a year for the next 40 years to repay the bond. Protecting natural resources could reduce costs of future damage. Supporters say that Prop 4 will help protect our communities' health and the economy. Opponents say bonds are the most expensive way to fund government spending and shouldn't be used. Prop 4 provides funding for some opponents say Prop 4 provides funding for unproven technologies with no real evidence of success. So some additional information to share, and I'm not sure if it's on the slides. 40 years ago, the US had a $1 billion climate disaster every 4 years. And now we have one every 3 weeks. And 40% of the funding for Prop 4 would go to low-income communities and cost about the same as the cost of disaster recovery. And the relative cost then of investing in infrastructure versus the cost of recovery from climate change-induced events is minimal. And then, of course, I have to add, especially after last week, when you account for the cost of loss of life, of humans, plants, and animals, you can't put a price on that. And so, who supports this proposition? Clean Action, National Wildlife Federation, California Professional Firefighters, and then miscellaneous donors contributed or raised $639,000. And then opponents with no funding include Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association, Senate GOP leader Brian Jones, Assembly member Jim Patterson, and again, with no funding.
Thank you. Proposition 5. Proposition 5 allows I just lost that, and I can't read that. All right, I'll come down here. Allows local bonds for affordable housing and public construction with 55% of the voter approval. Should local bond measures to fund housing bonds for low and middle income Californians and public infrastructure projects be allowed to pass with 55% of the vote instead of 66.7%, 2/3 of the vote. So right now, any housing bond has to be 2/3 vote. In 2000, Prop 39 changed the school bonds to 55%. They were 66.7% for passing the bond as well, and that was changed in 2000. And for many people, the feeling is that 67.7% is governance by the minority. So Prop 5, which is the current law, will right now the current law is the 2/3, and we want to change it to 55% in this proposition. It lowers the voting requirement so that we have closer to a simple majority. Not quite a simple majority, but closer. There would be little effect on the state budget, but might impact local government, local budgets. So supporters say that Prop 5 gives local communities more tools to make housing affordable. It will allow local voters to address community needs such as housing and safe streets, and it will be a little more than a majority that is required, but not 2/3. Opponents say that Prop 5 changes existing protections from high debt caused by bond issues in the California Constitution. Prop 5 pushes cost of infrastructure onto local governments and taxpayers. This does exclude single-family homes. For some reason, it would still be at a 2/3 vote in order to get school bonds, get bonds for single-family homes, but it includes any multiple-family home. California faces significant shortage of affordable housing. Lowering the voter threshold to pass affordable housing and infrastructure bonds helps local governments and state mandates for new housing units. It also includes a ban on using, as I just said, the bond funds for single-family units. Prop 5 opponents are the California Association of Realtors, the National Association of Realtors, the Business Roundtable, California Business Properties Association, and Gerald Marcel. I don't have any idea who Gerald Marcel is. And supporters are the California Professional Firefighters and Habitat for Humanity, but there's no financial support. And when we talk about the financial support, we have to say that we went through the Ballotpedia and the places you can get information about money about 2 weeks ago. So there may be more financial support, both pro and con, now than there was 2 weeks ago. The last election we found that it happened, as it got closer to the election, there was an increase in money that went into a lot of these. Okay?
All right. And you can look up Gerald J. Marcel, because I got curious after doing these presentations and he's a real estate developer, and there's more to discover. So Proposition 6, ends forced labor of people in jails and prisons. And the question is, should the California Constitution be amended to remove the provision that allows involuntary servitude to be used as punishment for a crime, prohibit punishment for refusing a work assignment, and allow voluntary work assignments in exchange for credit to reduce sentences? The situation: the California Constitution prohibits forced labor except as punishment for crime. And there are 16 states in the US, including California, that allow this exception currently. The proposal is to amend the Constitution to prohibit involuntary servitude for any reason, prohibit disciplining people in prison who refuse a work assignment. The fiscal effects: the impact on state and local costs are uncertain. Any effect is unlikely to exceed tens of millions of dollars annually. Supporters say the impact on state and local costs are uncertain. Supporters say, that's what I just said. Proposition 6 restores human dignity by ending forced labor, which constitutes slavery and violates human rights. It also improves public safety by focusing on rehabilitation of incarcerated people. Opponents: there was no argument against Prop 6 submitted. Some additional information to share. This was placed on the ballot through bipartisan support, and it was introduced through the California Black Caucus. And passage supports rehabilitation and reintegration of incarcerated individuals by allowing the choice of meaningful rehab, training, and education as an option. Supporting with funding totaling $319,000, All of Us or None Action Network for $220,000, ACLU Northern Cal, $45,000, Communities United for Restorative Youth Justice, $25,000, and then smaller donations under $20,000 total. And no opposing funding either, although Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association does identify as an opponent.
All right, moving right along. We're moving now into the initiatives which have been put on the ballot by signatures from the general public, the people that stand out in front of the grocery store and say, "Would you sign my petition, please?" Be careful of those, by the way. Don't just sign them. Make sure you know what you're signing. Okay, Prop 32. It raises the minimum wage, and the question is, should California raise its statewide minimum wage to $18 an hour by January of 2026, and then each year based on inflation? The situation right now is that the minimum wage is $16 per hour. Certain industries and cities have higher minimum wages, but state law is $16 per hour. The proposal would raise the minimum wage to $18 per hour for all employees by 2026. Wage would adjust for cost of living each year after 2026. It would begin in 2027. And it would not lower any wages that are what people are already receiving, more than $18 or more. The fiscal effects is that higher wages for the state and local governments will increase their costs. There's no question about that. Revenues will likely decrease. Lower use of Medi-Cal and CalFresh may be the other side of that. So people who are getting $16 per hour may still be receiving Medi-Cal for their medical care. And if it goes to $18 an hour, at least some of those people will no longer be eligible for Medi-Cal. Supporters say that raising the minimum wage will improve the standard of living for millions of workers and promote economic fairness. Opponents say that raising the minimum wage will hurt businesses, raise prices, and cause job loss. Taxes may be raised if government pays more wages. Supporters are the Working Hero Action for the Living Wage, Kevin De Leon, he's back again, and the total funding in support of this particular proposition is $10.8 million. Opponents, Californians Against Job Losses and Higher Prices, no on 32, and that was at $10,000. Just for, there was something I wanted to add, it's on the other side of the card. In 2024, health workers' minimum wage increased to $23 an hour. That is already in existence. And in 2026, it became $25 an hour. And then fast food workers have, in April 2024, there's minimum wage increased to $20 per hour. And I believe a lot of that was based on COVID, where some of the essential workers were doing things that nobody else was willing to get out and do and be in the midst of things. And so they got increased salaries.
Thank you. And feel free to hand me the clicker when I totally forgot about that, because you're juggling a lot more than I am. All right, so we're moving into Proposition 33, which I'll review with you, and then Sue's going to review Proposition 34. And the two on the surface might not seem like they relate. They might seem really different, but they are connected, and it gets a little sticky or complicated. So just 3 points to share to frame it out. The AIDS Healthcare Foundation is a big contributor to Proposition 33, which is about rent control. And the California Apartment Association and other real estate interests oppose Proposition 33. Proposition 34 targets the AIDS Healthcare Foundation and has significant contributions from the California Apartment Association. So there's something going on there. So Proposition 33 expands local government's authority to enact rent control on residential property. The question, should the Costa-Hawkins Rental Housing Act of 1995, which is a state law, be repealed so local governments can regulate rents? The situation, the state law prevents rent control on single-family homes and housing built after 1995. Some cities have rent control laws limiting how much landlords can increase rent. I think Berkeley is one of those examples. Am I right? The proposal is to remove the law that prohibits rent control on single-family homes and housing built after 1995 and stop the state from limiting local governments from having rent control. So the fiscal effects, little for the state budget, but it will impact local budgets depending on how many cities or counties pass rent control laws and what landlords do. So supporters say that Proposition 33 will allow local governments to protect renters. Local voters will be able to decide on whether and how to control rents. Opponents say that Proposition 33 will allow will increase costs to build housing, therefore making the state's housing crisis worse. Proposition 33 will drive up costs for renters and home buyers. And there's not a slide with additional information. It's just, I think, highlighting that this is really a complex choice between balancing immediate need for housing against the possible long-term effects or impacts on housing availability. So it's not a clear-cut issue. In terms of funding, there is $31.3 million in support from the AIDS Healthcare Foundation, which is, if you look at the amount, $30.5 million, so most of the support. But also there's the Kevin De Leon for Lieutenant Governor 2026 at $600,000. I looked him up too, so that's researchable. United here at Local 11, $50,000, and then smaller donors for 10,000 collectively. And then some other supporters that didn't fund include the Renters and Homeowners for Rent Control Yes on 33, and Kevin DeLeon, Believing in a Better California, Yes on 3, 32, and 33. On the opposing side, there's $53.9 million in funding from, and I don't think I need to read the amounts, you can see them, the California Apartment Association, California Association of Realtors, National Association of Realtors, California Association of Realtors, Mobilization PAC, Michael K. Haid, including Western National Group and affiliated entities, and smaller donations of under $1 million. Did you want to add anything more to that one? Like the East Bay article that you, the East Bay Times article or anything, or?
I don't remember. Right. All right. There's a few things that dropped through the cracks here. There was an East Bay article a couple of days ago. If you want to look that up, I think it was Friday, last Sunday. Right. And that talks a little bit about some of the issues with both 33 and 34. So 34 restricts spending of prescription and revenues by certain healthcare providers. Note certain healthcare providers. We'll talk about that in a minute. So should certain healthcare providers be required to spend 98% of revenues from a federal discount prescription drug program on direct patient care, and should the state of permanently be authorized to negotiate Medi-Cal drug prices? Seems like a very straightforward kind of thing. Situation right now is that healthcare providers earn revenues from a federal drug discount program, and they can decide how to spend that money in the way that they think best supports the health of their clientele. The proposal would create new rules about how certain healthcare providers spend money earned from the discount drug program, and and the state would get a permanently ability to negotiate drug prices. So when it says certain healthcare providers, it is so specific in how it is described. Did you happen to write that down? Oh, okay. It is so specific in how it defines healthcare providers that it turns out that the AIDS Foundation is the only healthcare provider it affects. So that makes it a little creepy to me. But they're both, they're contending with each other. They're, one is wanting to control something that the other does, and vice versa. So that's something everybody needs to really look into and figure out how that affects your vote. There could be millions of dollars of financial impact to identify and punish providers who violate the law, and fines will likely be imposed on those providers. Supporters say that Prop 34 will ensure more money from the discounted drug program, and it will be used for patient health care. And Prop 34 will make the discount program permanent. Opponents say that Prop 34 targets one healthcare provider that supports rent control, and the federal law allows profits from drug discounts to support any use of their finances, any nonprofit mission of the healthcare providers. Supporters are the Yes on 34, Protect Patients Now, 14.9, and the California Apartment Association. Opponents, Stop the Revenge Initiative, No on 34, and the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. I think that I've said all I need to say.
All right. So if there's any issue that you're going to do background investigation or research into, it might be those two. Might be worth it, because I think it's kind of unfair. It's so complicated. There's so much that's unsaid. So Proposition 35 does also relate to Medi-Cal, but in a slightly different way. It provides permanent funding for Medi-Cal healthcare services, which, you know, you probably know this, Medi-Cal is Medicaid in all the other states. And it is the biggest public health insurance program in the U.S. We've got 80 million enrollees nationwide, 15 million in the state of California. 1 in 5 Americans is on Medicaid, and it is jointly financed by both state and federal governments. And I know you have that upcoming session, November 3rd, with high caps. Oh, November 3rd. So the question at stake is, should California make permanent an existing tax on managed health care plans to provide ongoing funding for Medi-Cal and other health care services? The situation, California pays for the part of its share of Medi-Cal through a temporary tax on managed care organizations. And the proposal is to make that existing temporary tax permanent. Also to create new rules for how that tax money can be spent. The fiscal effects, an increase of $2 to $5 billion a year to fund Medi-Cal and other health programs in a few years, additional costs to cover services not included in Proposition 35. And so, you know, that's money to go to physicians, ambulance companies. It's unclear, you know, for smaller clinics, it's unclear how that will be funded. Supporters say that Proposition 35 will support health services and improve access to doctors who help low-income people. Opponents say no argument was submitted against, and some additional information to share that is on the slides from the San Francisco Chronicle. Their editorial board summarized the opposition. Opposition includes, well, criticism that this is ballot box budgeting and that it will eliminate flexibility of legislature as state income fluctuates. So it creates a limitation, like we're frozen wherever we are when we make it permanent. And it requires a 3/4 vote in both legislative houses to change the law, or a new proposition to go to the voters for any change. And the federal government has warned that Proposition 35 exploits the system, that we'd be out of compliance, and so future funding could be reduced in the coming years. Supporting this proposition, and you can see the long list there: California Hospitals Committee on Issues, Global Medical Response, California Medical Association, California Primary Care Association, and I'll let you read the rest. It totals $48.7 million in donations to support this proposition. And then opposing no funding, but it's the California Pan-Ethnic Health Network, the Children's Partnership, California Alliance for Retired Americans, and Courage California.
All right, last one. I will just want to add, because this is one of several, when it says that there was no opponent's argument or no favorable arguments, it means nothing was submitted in a timely way to get into the voter's guide. And it doesn't mean that necessarily that nobody has anything to say about it. It probably does mean somebody has something to say about it. All right, Proposition 36. Proposition 36 allows felony charges and increased sentences for certain drug and crimes that are committed, theft crimes. Should California allow people to be charged with felonies for possessing certain drugs and for thefts under $950? if the defendant has 2 prior drug or theft convictions. Present situation is that in 2014, a ballot measure, Proposition 47, I believe, turned nonviolent crimes of theft and certain kinds of drug possession into misdemeanors. And this was an attempt to reduce prison population, which was required by federal guidelines. The proposal is to turn some of these misdemeanors back into felonies and lengthen sentences and require some sentences to be served in prison versus jail. Prison is what is away from things and is primarily for felony crimes, and jail is local, and that is usually the misdemeanors. And the fiscal effect is that there would be an increased state and local costs for prisons, jails, and mental health and drug treatment. They likely between tens of thousands of dollars. So what would happen is the money would get shifted to the cost of the prisons and the jails versus the treatment and the rehabilitation. Supporters say that Prop 36 makes communities safer by holding repeat thieves accountable and making thieves and drug dealers serve tougher sentences. Opponents say that it would make California less safe by stopping crime prevention and drug treatment programs, which there are some results that say this is successful, that there is a successful process of lack of people returning to crime if they get much of these treatment. And Prop 36 would cost taxpayers billions of dollars. Prop 36, according to the opponents, says that it erodes the criminal justice reform by reversing advances and reducing mass incarceration. It imposes stricter sentencing laws that disproportionately impact lower income and people of color. And it shifts dollars from treatment and rehab programs into prisons. Supporters are that yes on 36, California for Safer Communities, Californians for Safe Stores and Neighborhoods, Walmart, Target, Home Depot, California Business Roundtable, and 7-Eleven. Opponents, Committee to Protect Public Safety, no on Proposition 36, and ACLU, no on, ACLU Northern California. Prop 36 rolls back part of 47 based in 2014, intended to reduce prison populations, reclassifies some misdemeanors into felonies, imposes harsher sentences for drug possession and retail theft, and shifts incarceration from county jail to the state prisons. The Legislative Auditor's Office estimates that the increase in state prison population will result in increased costs of prisons and both local and state courts. It will also reduce dollars for programs for crime victims, K-12 kids, and those in need of mental health and substance abuse services. All right, just a little bit more. In August of this year, after all of this stuff was printed, the legislature and Governor Newsom passed some laws that in fact did some of these things. One of the things that changed is that if there is a third criminal behavior of theft of $950 or less, that would become a felony. The other thing that I can recall off the top of my head was that the courts were given more ability to make a judgment about whether the crime should be a felony or a misdemeanor. Yeah, I think that's about all that I know about that one. Correct. Right. Smash and grab is a totally different law, actually. There's a law specifically for smash and grab, and most of the time that's more than $950. So it's really addressing shoplifting and some of the smaller crimes. All right. Questions?
Will you talk to the people at home too?
So my question's about 2 and 4. According to what you said when we talked about Prop 5, 2 would require 55% for affirmative vote, and 4 would require 67? So so it would.
I believe that would be the majority, because I think that the 66% is not on all bonds. It was specific to schools for a while and then housing.
Oh, okay. So okay. Thank you.
Sure. Sure. Then you can kind of answer questions like into the microphone.
You mentioned an article that compared 33 and 35, 34. Where would I find that?
So there was an article in the East Bay Times on Sunday, September 28th.
There actually have been many, many articles on 33 and 34, both that are, pretty nonpartisan in terms of how they compare them, and some that are very much leaning one way or the other. But if you look it up if you Google 33 and 34, you will get lots of information.
I just wanted to give you a little bit of context on some of the budget measures. California has traditionally been the 5th largest economy in the world. I think we're now 3rd. Our annual budget is just shy of $300 billion. Our general fund budget is just over $200 billion. So if we're repaying $400 million, $500 million, you're looking at less than 0.5% of the general fund budget for that year.
Did you still have a question on? Thank you for waiting and saving it.
So my biggest question on bonds and measures, I would like to know how they anticipate generating the money. Where are they going to come after? So in Prop 2 for schools, that would mean an increase in property taxes most likely. And then I'm curious of where they would get, how they anticipate the $40 million annually for 40 years to repay that bond back. Where does the state anticipate they're going to generate that money? What taxes are they going to raise? Gasoline, et cetera?
You want to do that one?
So let's remember that bonds are purchased. You can buy bonds after they are passed. And so people make an investment in bonds, and some of that money goes back into general fund. Well, all of the money goes back into general fund. And general fund is where the payment comes from. And so, yes, there's more money. As Alisa said, it's a really small percentage of our budget. So that's another piece. The only place where it will become a possible increase in our property tax would be when locally, and it would be a new vote, the community votes locally to match the funds of the state to support their local school system. It's the only time that it becomes eligible for a property tax.
If you have fiscal concerns, I'd really like to point you into the direction of the Legislative Analyst's Office. They give a really good breakdown on how everything factors out. For example, with Prop 4, you would have a repayment of about $400 million a year out of the general fund, so no specific taxes would be raised. But we've had hundreds of billions of dollars that they assume will be offset by improvements in that infrastructure. So you have to look at not just what you're spending, but what is that, where is that getting you? How does that impact what you're doing? And a comment on the felony situation. If you have a felony on your record, that is an amazingly impactful thing for your ability to be rehabilitated and to get work, because that's something that you need to disclose on employment applications. So taking a felony seriously and the impact that that has on someone's life is really important. And the financial cost.
Thank you. Other questions?
Who of the opposers of number 6 and one of the earlier numbers, who is the Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association?
The Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association are the people initially who passed Proposition 13 in California. They are pretty much against any tax. And you can look them up and you can get any information online about them, but they are anti-taxes no matter what, if anybody disagrees with that.
Thank you. It would seem like over time, bonds that were passed some years ago get paid off as new bonds come on. So it isn't necessarily an overall tax, because maybe the new tax is replacing a previous tax that was passed, bond that was passed 10 years or whatever years ago.
Yeah, the taxes the bonds get paid over a very long period of time, but with the school tax, or the request for the bonds for the school, the last time, first of all, the only time schools can get construction money, repair kinds of things like HVAC, to get extra money, they have to go for bonds. That is the only way that they can get additional money for construction and maintenance. And the last time the voters passed any money for maintenance and construction within our school system was 2016. And in 2022, we voted it down.
In number 34, about the or just regular medical revenues, I was wondering who monitors how those revenues are used?
Now or if it passes? I have to say I don't know what their plan is for monitoring that. It was very specific, and someplace in the state it's going to have to be enforced. Right. I think as long as it's, you mean for the AIDS Foundation getting money from the government for drug costs, are you asking how that's monitored as to where it goes? Go ahead.
Or were you asking about the fines? Right. 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 And I don't know the specific, I don't know if it's Medi-Cal or someone else. However, However, that also costs money. You know, the oversight and the process of trying to regulate it costs money too, as well. But was this related? Did you want to?
This is related to a local, I'm sorry. Related to the local school district Proposition Q. You stated that typically school bonds, once they're paid off, then they have to reauthorize more money for maintenance, upkeep, and all that kind of good stuff, which I believe is what's going on with Proposition Q for the San Ramon Valley School District. Is that true or not?
I'll hand it to you.
It's probably not true. Probably some of those bonds are still being paid off, but they've run out of money. So when a new bond issue, this is my husband talking, when a new bond issue comes before the state, you guys, there is already a list of millions of dollars of requests from school districts that need money to put into HVAC, to make sure that the students aren't sitting in enclosed rooms without air conditioning on these hot days. Some of the other, getting good internet service. So that's why when you heard that the Legislative Analyst Office said that in 2022 there was a need for some billion dollars in requests that had already come in, and we haven't given them any money yet. Those requests are still sitting there, and that was 2 years ago. So it's not quite as easy as we pay them off right away, because they do go longer, but we do run out of money, and we have to, in my opinion, find ways to support our education system, or whatever it is that we see as valuable in our community.
And not all bond money is money that is just out the door. For example, in Prop 4, a lot of that bond money is loaned to local governments and local entities that need to undertake repairs or whatever they're doing, and they will repay that back. So it's not all just money out the door. You have to really look and see how it's funded.
Will you come with us to all of our presentations, please?
All right, where's all the lottery money going to? Because we voted yes for a lottery in the state of California. They convinced us all it was going to go to the school districts.
The lottery money gets used for single-purpose needs, and I'm not sure exactly how it gets, but it can't go to anything that requires long-term funding, because it's an annual kind of thing. There's no guarantee how much money you're going to get from it. And when you split the money statewide over all the districts, there's thousands of districts in California. So it really isn't all that much money.
I can add a little something about the lottery money. I know my particular district, where I used to teach, the money from lottery that came in annually was always under 3% of their budget. So they don't get a huge chunk. As you say, it's divided by a large number of districts. My main question is, when you see all the people that have funded something, what does the funding do? By TV ads, or where does that funding go?
as far as I understand, and I think you said at the beginning, we are not experts on this. We're voters who've done a little research. But as far as I understand, that funding does go for TV ads, printing up things, hiring people to gather signatures for petitions, and so it's sort of like campaign money. It's not going toward the cause that they're supporting or opposing.
A suggestion for the league is that you, before presentations start, have a presentation on the total flow of money in and out and what expires and what is new. Because we as taxpayers keep getting all these individual measures to vote on, but they have a compounding effect on the end result that the taxpayer pays. That's probably a good analysis problem for somebody.
Absolutely a good analysis for somebody.
And she was mentioning hiring people to go out and get signatures for ballot propositions. Actually read what they're telling you it's about, because they get paid by the signature, and that doesn't lead them to always be as forthright as they might be. So do read it. Don't just rely on their little blurb of what that's about.
Thank you. Covering everybody? Great. All right, just to talk. You want any more slides? You want me to? Sure. Well, you were going to do this?
I think so. Yes. All right. Still need notes. Make sure I hit every point. So we have to emphasize, if you don't already know, November 5th is Election Day, and our ballots are going to be mailed out starting on Monday. And so I think, is it the 8th of October? The drop box is open. So you can start as soon as Tuesday if you get your ballot. October 21st is the last day to register by mail if you're not already registered. And make sure you sign the envelope on your ballot, too. That part's important. And if you want to track and follow things, you can go to where'smyballot.sos.ca.gov. And you can also get more information at the other. We'll share the websites so that you can share them in a...
There's a handout going around, and it'll be posted here that has a whole bunch of fact checking.
Great. And the last point.
Well, 2 pieces of additional information. Even though you can only register by mail till October 21st, you can go to your voting place and register in the moment up till November 5th, 6th, whatever, and register and submit a ballot, and that would be considered a provisional ballot, and that will, once they have ascertained that you're fine being registered, your vote will count. So it's just a process. We have a phenomenal voter election office in Contra Costa. They are very, very secure. They are incredible people. I think we should all feel really safe and comfortable with what our election office does for us. And so finally, we want to just suggest also that you look at Vote 411, which the League completes. They make happen across the nation. The way this happens is they ask everybody running in any campaign, nationally, state, and local, to fill out a little blurb about who they are and why they're running and what they want to do. It's really particularly good for the local elections, and if you go on to Vote 411 and it's blank, you have somebody who has not filled it in, they have chosen not to fill it in. They have been invited multiple times to fill this out or have one of their campaign people fill it out. So, you know, you can take that into consideration. You've been given, most of you have been given a Vote 411 bookmark. There'll be more over on the table here. And just want to again repeat that for further information, Ballotpedia, Cal Matters, the Legislative Auditor's Office, League of Women Voters, all of those can give you more extensive information. Thank you very much. It's a very engaged group. Thank you.